presented to the chairman of INEC.
Up next is Daniel Bwala, a member of Lincoln's Inn, and here is his take on the suit filed before the court as it has to do with the health status of the president.
If I have to give a very straight answer, I will say no, because if you look at the provision of Section 144 of the Constitution, you will see that it says the president or the vice president will cease to act in that capacity, cease to function in that office if there is a 2/3 majority resolution by all executive members of the Executive Council, right? And then that notice will be given to the National Assembly. So, and the Supreme Court has held that the word "and" means is mandatory. That means it is not just enough for the National Assembly or the Senate President to act without a resolution from the members of the Federal Executive Council. So, no, the National Assembly cannot be compelled to act without a resolution by the members of the Executive Council. And it is intriguing that the resolution of the Federal Executive Council is not even a simple majority. The Constitution states in clear terms 2/3 majority of all the members. So all of the members have to be seated, all of the members have to vote, and then you have 2/3 majority from them before the National Assembly can act. Without that, it will be difficult. And the case is even more difficult by the fact that if it were a situation where, for example, the president traveled out of the country, or he's sick, he's incapable of performing his duty, and has not transferred power, and some members of the Federal Executive Council are already calling for a resolution, there is a confusion as to where, then in the circumstance, any of them can have a local standard to say, okay, they can approach the court, or they can write a letter to the National Assembly to say, use your authority or position to do that. But in this case, the president has transferred power, so the case is even more difficult, and if you ask me, I would say near impossible.
At what point is President's continuing medical absence going to raise an alarm bell as to his capacity or incapacity to function as president?
Constitutionally, the concern is only raised if, for example, there is a delay, ineffectiveness, or no proper governance. And a typical picture is if, for example, President Buhari was unable to transmit power and he travels abroad. So that means the vice president does not have the full capacity of the president to be able to carry out the function. Then that will be an alarm bell for which it will call for intervention. But in this case, he has transferred power. So however long he stays abroad for treatment, I do not think constitutionally that is going to be a blockade or is going to raise an alarm for determination of itself, so long as his absence does not affect governance. And in this case, it doesn't look so. The Constitution is not very open about that. And that's because if you look at the Section 144 and you read down, you will see the word permanent incapacity of the body and mind. It means that the situation has to be precarious. If you want to give a literal interpretation of permanent incapacity of the body and mind, then the president does not even qualify to be placed in that position where you would say he is permanently incapable. Because somebody who has gone for treatment and comes back after a while and goes back for treatment cannot be considered as being permanently incapable of carrying out the function. So Constitution is not clear about that. And as long as the full powers has been transmitted to the vice president, there is no need for alarm.
In other words, it can stay as long.
Yes, it can stay. Some people argue that they look at other provisions of the law where if the president, for example, stays for as long as a certain period, like 21 days or the rest, they are going to raise questions as regarding his absence. But when power is transmitted, I hold the view that in that capacity, you cannot say that you are going to invoke that part of the Constitution to raise an alarm. The most important thing the Constitution can contemplate is governance. The absence of the president or vice should not affect governance. And the question we must all ask ourselves is, his absence, is it affecting governance? The answer is no.
When no member of the Fed finds it fit to raise questions, can't the doctrine of necessity be invoked?
It is not applicable here. It was applicable in the case of Yaradua because he traveled for medical treatment and did not transfer power at the time he was traveling. So the then vice president, President Goodluck Jonathan, was limited, because if you look at section 145, 46, 47, you will see the functions of the vice president are only the things that the particular functions or assignment that the president gives to him. But when power is transmitted pursuant to the provision of the Constitution, then that means everything the president can do, the vice president can now do in acting capacity. So if you look at the literal interpretation of that, then in the circumstance, you cannot apply the doctrine of necessity, because power has been transmitted, governance is on course. So I do not think that it is applicable in the circumstance. It was applicable in the time of Jonathan, and the National Assembly corrected that there must be a transmission of power before the president travels, and in this case, he did that. So I consider the calls for the determination of his health as being mischievous. I see that as being peddled by people. I wouldn't say people that are sponsored by some political, big weights. Sometimes people honestly will want to develop the law, or they have honest questions. But even I heard of somebody who has filed an action in the court of law seeking for the court to mandate the Senate president to constitute a medical panel. That person is not a member of the National Assembly, not a member of the Executive Council. In the eyes of the law, it's a meddlesome interloper.
Well, the case in question has yet to be assigned, but it promises to be quite an exciting politically charged case that will indeed deepen Nigeria's jurisprudence. And Project Justice will be on hand to bring you all the details as it develops. Well, that's the show for this week. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms, on Twitter, on Facebook, and view us on YouTube. And on behalf of the entire production team, I am Mutaba Moran. I'll see you next week.